Sarah Mitchell stood in the cold morning rain at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California. Water dripped from her helmet. Her boots were covered in mud. Her hands were raw and bleeding from the obstacle course. But she didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared straight ahead while the instructor screamed in her face. "You think you belong here, Mitchell?" Chief Petty Officer Dawson shouted. His voice cut through the sound of the rain. "You think you can do what these men do?" Sarah said nothing. She had learned that lesson in week 1. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't react. Don't give them a reason, but Dawson didn't need a reason. "This is SEAL training, not a fitness class," he continued. "Every day you're here, you're taking a spot from someone who actually has a chance. Someone who can actually complete the mission." Behind her, Sarah heard some of the other candidates shift uncomfortably. A few snickered. She knew what they were thinking. She had heard the whispers in the barracks. She had seen the looks in the mess hall. "She doesn't belong, she's too small. She'll quit by the end of the month." Sarah was 5'6" and weighed 135 pounds. Most of the men around her were over 6 feet tall and outweighed her by 70 or 80 pounds. On paper, she was at a disadvantage, and everyone made sure she knew it. But Sarah had never cared much about paper. She grew up in a small town in Montana called Timber Falls. Population, 4,000. Her father had been a logger. Her mother worked at the elementary school. They didn't have much money, but they had something better. They had grit. When Sarah was 12, her father died in a logging accident. A chain snapped. A tree fell the wrong way. He was gone before the ambulance could even arrive. Her mother never recovered from the grief. She became quiet, distant. Sarah and her younger brother Danny had to grow up fast. Sarah worked 2 jobs in high school. She graduated top of her class. She could have gone to college. She had scholarship offers. But Danny was only 14, and her mother could barely get out of bed most days. So Sarah stayed. She worked at the diner. She worked at the hardware store. She kept the family together. Then one day, Danny came home with a recruiter's pamphlet. He was 17 and full of ideas about serving his country, about becoming a hero, about seeing the world. Sarah tried to talk him out of it. She reminded him of what happened to their father. She told him the world wasn't some adventure. It was dangerous, unforgiving, but Danny wouldn't listen. He enlisted the day after he turned 18. 6 months later, Sarah got the call. Danny's unit had been ambushed in Afghanistan. An IED, he didn't make it. Sarah stood at his funeral in her black dress, staring at the folded flag, and made a promise. She would finish what Danny started. She would serve. She would fight. She would make sure his death meant something. That was 4 years ago. Now at 26, Sarah had made it through boot camp. She had made it through the initial training. She had volunteered for the Special Warfare Pipeline. And somehow, against all odds, she had made it this far. But this far wasn't far enough. Every day was a test. Every drill was a chance for someone to tell her she didn't measure up. The physical tests were brutal. The mental games were worse. The instructors pushed everyone to the edge, but they pushed Sarah harder. They made her carry heavier loads. They made her run longer distances. They made her repeat exercises the men only had to do once, and when she succeeded, they didn't congratulate her. They just found something else to criticize. "Your form is sloppy, Mitchell. You're too slow, Mitchell. You're going to get someone killed, Mitchell." The other candidates weren't much better. Some ignored her. Some made jokes. A few were outright hostile. There was one in particular. His name was Garrett. He was 6'3", 220 pounds, and had an ego the size of Texas. He had been a college football star before joining the Navy. He thought special warfare would be easy. He hated that Sarah kept up with him. "Hey, Mitchell," Garrett said one night in the chow hall. He was sitting with a group of other candidates. They were all laughing about something. "I've got a question for you." Sarah looked up from her tray. She was exhausted. Every muscle in her body ached. She just wanted to eat and sleep. "What?" she asked. "When are you going to quit?" Garrett grinned. "I mean, we all know it's coming. Why drag it out? You've already proved whatever point you're trying to make." The table went quiet. Everyone waited for her response. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her fork and went back to eating. "I'm not quitting," she said simply. Garrett laughed. "Yeah, okay. We'll see. But here's the thing about Sarah Mitchell. She didn't know how to quit. When her father died, she didn't quit. When her mother fell apart, she didn't quit. When Danny was killed, she didn't quit. She got up. She kept moving. She did what needed to be done, and she would do it here too, no matter what they said, no matter what they did, no matter how many times they told her she didn't belong. She would prove them all wrong, even if it killed her. The weeks turned into months. The training grew harder, more brutal, more unforgiving. Hell Week came and went. 5.5 days of constant physical activity with almost no sleep. Candidates dropped like flies. They rang the bell, they quit. They went home. But Sarah didn't ring the bell. She crawled through the mud. She carried the boats. She ran until her legs gave out, and then she ran some more. She dove into the freezing ocean water at midnight. She held her breath underwater until her lungs screamed. She did everything they asked and more. By the end of Hell Week, the class had shrunk from 140 candidates to 63. Sarah was still there. Garrett was still there too. And he was getting angrier. "She's getting special treatment," he complained to anyone who would listen. "They're going easier on her because she's a woman." It's all politics. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. The instructors went harder on Sarah, not easier. But the lie spread anyway. Because lies always spread faster than truth. Some of the candidates started to believe it. They started to resent her, not because she was failing, but because she was succeeding, and that made everything worse. During water training, someone accidentally held her underwater too long during a drill. She nearly blacked out before the instructors noticed. During a night navigation exercise, someone moved her markers. She got lost for 3 hours in the dark and barely made it back before sunrise. During a team exercise, Garrett refused to pass her the rope during a climb. She had to find another way up, which cost their team precious time. The instructors punished the whole team with extra push-ups. And of course, everyone blamed Sarah. "If you weren't here, we wouldn't have these problems," one candidate muttered. Sarah said nothing. She just did her push-ups, but inside she was breaking. Not physically. Physically, she was getting stronger every day. Her body had adapted. Her muscles had hardened. She could do things now that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. No, she was breaking mentally, emotionally, because it didn't matter how hard she worked. It didn't matter how many tests she passed. It didn't matter that she never quit, never complained, never asked for special treatment. To them, she would always be an outsider. A mistake, a diversity checkbox. One night, after a particularly brutal day, Sarah sat alone on the beach. The sun was setting over the Pacific. The sky was orange and purple. It was beautiful, but she barely noticed. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo of Danny. It was from his high school graduation. He was smiling, his whole life ahead of him. He had no idea what was coming. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to the photo. "I don't know if it's worth it." For the first time since arriving at Coronado, Sarah considered ringing the bell, just walking away, going home, finding a normal life, a quiet life. But then she remembered Danny's funeral. She remembered the officer who handed her the folded flag. She remembered the empty words. He died serving his country. What did that even mean? Danny had been 19 years old. He had barely started living. He died on a dusty road halfway across the world, and for what? Sarah had promised herself she would find the answer to that question. She would understand what Danny died for. She would make sure it wasn't for nothing, and the only way to do that was to finish what he started. So she put the phone away. She stood up. She brushed the sand off her uniform, and she went back to the barracks. The next day, everything changed. The class was doing live fire exercises at the range. They were practicing close-quarters combat scenarios, moving through buildings, clearing rooms. Working as teams, Sarah was partnered with 3 other candidates, including Garrett. He wasn't happy about it, but he didn't have a choice. The exercise was going smoothly until it wasn't. They were clearing the 3rd floor of the training building when Garrett moved too fast. He didn't check his corner. He didn't follow protocol, and he walked right into a simulated ambush. The role players hit him with marking rounds. Paint exploded across his chest. According to the rules, he was dead, but Garrett didn't stop. He was embarrassed, angry. He kept moving, trying to salvage the situation, and that's when he tripped. It happened in slow motion. Garrett stumbled backward toward the stairwell. There was no railing, nothing to grab. He was going over the edge. A fall from that height onto concrete would mean broken bones. Maybe worse, Sarah didn't think. She just moved. She lunged forward and grabbed Garrett's tactical vest with both hands. Her fingers locked onto the fabric. Her boots dug into the floor. She pulled with everything she had. Garrett was 220 pounds of dead weight falling backward. Sarah weighed 135 pounds. The physics didn't make sense, but Sarah didn't care about physics. She pulled. She strained. She felt something pop in her shoulder, but she didn't let go. And somehow, impossibly, she yanked Garrett back from the edge. They both crashed to the floor. Sarah's shoulder was on fire. Garrett was gasping for breath, his eyes wide with shock. The instructors stopped the exercise immediately. They rushed over. What happened? Chief Dawson demanded. Garrett sat up slowly. He looked at Sarah, then at the stairwell, then back at Sarah. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Sarah waited for it. The excuse, the lie, the way he would minimize what just happened. But instead, Garrett did something unexpected. She saved my life, he said quietly. I wasn't paying attention. I almost fell. She grabbed me. Chief Dawson looked at Sarah. His expression was unreadable. Your shoulder? He asked. It's fine, Chief, Sarah lied. It wasn't fine. It hurt like hell, but she wasn't about to admit that. Dawson stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Take 5 minutes. Then we continue. That night, something shifted. Garrett didn't apologize. He didn't thank her. He didn't suddenly become her best friend, but he stopped making comments. He stopped sabotaging her, and when others complained about her, he stayed quiet. It wasn't much, but it was something. The other candidates noticed. Slowly, the hostility began to decrease. Not from everyone. Not completely. But enough. Sarah kept her head down and kept working. 3 months later, she graduated from basic underwater demolition SEAL training. Out of 140 candidates who started, only 42 finished. Sarah Mitchell was one of them. She stood in her dress uniform at the graduation ceremony, her shoulder still aching from the injury she never reported, and received her certificate. Her mother was there. She was smiling for the first time since Danny died. Chief Dawson shook Sarah's hand. He leaned in close. You earned this, Mitchell, he said. Don't let anyone tell you different, Sarah nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak, but the training wasn't over. But was just the beginning. The real test was still ahead. After graduation, Sarah was assigned to Special Warfare Development Group. It was the next level. The elite. The best of the best. But even here, she had to prove herself all over again. The training was different now. More specialized. More secretive. They taught her things that didn't have names. Tactics that didn't officially exist. Methods that would never be discussed outside certain rooms. Sarah excelled at all of it. She was a natural marksman. Her small frame made her steady, patient. She could control her breathing, slow her heart rate, and make impossible shots look easy. She was brilliant at languages. She picked up Arabic, Pashto, and Farsi faster than candidates who had been studying for years. And she had something the instructors couldn't teach. Something that came from growing up hard in Montana, from losing her father, from working 2 jobs at 16, from burying her baby brother. She had the ability to endure. Not just physical pain. Anyone could be trained to handle that. But the deeper kind of endurance, the kind that lets you keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. When logic says it's over, when hope is gone. Sarah had lived in that place before. She knew how to survive there. The instructors noticed. One of them was a man named Thomas Reeves. Commander Reeves had been in the Navy for 23 years. He had seen combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and places that weren't on any official record. He was quiet, observant. He didn't waste words, and he saw something in Sarah that others missed. Mitchell, he said one day after a training exercise, walk with me. They walked along the beach. The sun was setting again, always setting. Sarah sometimes felt like she lived in a permanent state of twilight. You're good, Reeves said. Better than good. You're exceptional. Sarah didn't know what to say. Compliments made her uncomfortable. Thank you, sir. But exceptional isn't enough, Reeves continued. Not for where we're going. Not for what we do. I understand, sir. Reeves stopped walking. He turned to face her. Do you know why you're really here, Mitchell? Sarah frowned. To serve, sir. To complete the mission. Reeves shook his head. No, I mean why you're really here. Why you pushed through all of it. The mockery. The sabotage, the pain. What's driving you? Sarah thought about lying. about giving the answer she was supposed to give. Something about duty and honor and country. But Reeves would see through it. "My brother," she said quietly. "He died in Afghanistan. I need to understand why. I need to make it mean something." Reeves nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." He started walking again. Sarah followed. "I'm going to tell you something that might hurt," Reeves said. "Your brother's death probably didn't mean anything. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The IED that killed him wasn't personal. It wasn't strategic. It was just random, senseless. That's war, Mitchell. That's the truth nobody wants to admit." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. She had known this somewhere deep down, but hearing it spoken out loud was different. "But," Reeves continued, "what you do now can mean something. The skills you have, the determination, the refusal to quit, that can save lives. Real lives, people with families, people with futures. You can make sure that fewer mothers get the call your mother got. Fewer sisters lose their brothers." He stopped again and looked at her directly. "I'm putting together a team for a special assignment. High risk, high value. Most people don't have the clearance to even know it exists. I want you on it." Sarah's heart raced. "Sir, I'm honored, but I've only been—" "I know how long you've been here," Reeves interrupted. "I also know what you can do. I need someone with your language skills, your marksmanship. Your size." "My size, sir?" Reeves smiled slightly. "Where we're going, being 5'6" instead of 6'3" is an advantage. You can blend in, move through crowds, be underestimated." That last word hung in the air. "You've been underestimated your whole life, haven't you, Mitchell?" Sarah nodded. "Good," Reeves said. "Keep it that way. It's a weapon." 2 weeks later, Sarah was on a plane to an undisclosed location in the Middle East. She couldn't tell her mother where she was going. She couldn't tell anyone. She signed documents that made it clear she didn't officially exist anymore. If something went wrong, the government would deny any knowledge of her or her team. The mission was simple in concept, complex in execution. There was a man named Nazir al-Hamid. He was a high-value target, a bomb maker responsible for dozens of attacks that had killed hundreds of people, including American soldiers. He was also a ghost. He never stayed in one place. He never used phones or computers. He communicated through couriers and trusted no one. But intelligence suggested he had one weakness. His sister. She lived in a city called Tal Rifat in northern Syria. Nazir visited her twice a year, always in disguise, always with heavy security. The next visit was in 3 days. The plan was to insert a small team into the city. They would blend in with the local population, set up surveillance, confirm Nazir's presence, and then either capture or eliminate him. Sarah's role was crucial. She would pose as a local woman. Her Arabic was flawless. Her appearance with the right clothes and makeup would allow her to move freely where the male operators couldn't. She would be the eyes on the ground. The team inserted at night. They came in from the Turkish border, moving through territory controlled by various factions. It was dangerous. One wrong checkpoint, one suspicious guard, and the mission was over. But they made it. For 2 days, Sarah lived in a small apartment above a bakery. She wore a hijab and a long dress. She went to the market. She talked to neighbors. She observed the sisters' house from every angle. The male members of the team stayed hidden. Commander Reeves coordinated from a safe house 3 blocks away. Sarah was alone. On the 3rd day, a convoy arrived at the sisters' house. Sarah was in the market across the street pretending to buy vegetables. Her earpiece was hidden beneath her hijab. A tiny camera was built into the button of her dress. "I count 4 vehicles," she whispered in English so quietly that her lips barely moved. "Approximately 12 armed men. They're moving someone inside. Adult male. Average height. I can't see his face. Hold position," Reeves's voice came through the earpiece. Do not approach, but Sarah was already moving. Not toward the house. Toward a better vantage point. There was a building next to the sisters' house. 3 stories. From the roof, she would have a clear line of sight into the courtyard. She bought her vegetables. She walked calmly down the street. She entered the building through a side entrance and climbed the stairs. The roof access was locked, but locks had never stopped Sarah. She picked it in under 30 seconds. From the roof, she could see everything. The man they brought in was Nazir. She confirmed it by comparing his profile to the photos in her briefing. Same nose, same build, same distinctive scar on his left hand. "Positive ID," she whispered. "Target confirmed." Extraction in 2 hours, Reeves said. Return to the safe house. But then something went wrong. One of Nazir's guards looked up. He was young, alert, paranoid, and he saw Sarah just for a second. Just a glimpse of movement on the roof, but it was enough. The guard shouted something. Other guards turned. They started moving toward the building. Sarah's mind raced. She could run, try to make it down the stairs and disappear into the crowd. But they would catch her. And if they caught her, they would interrogate her, torture her, kill her, or worse, they would realize she was American military, and that would compromise the entire mission. She had maybe 60 seconds before they reached the roof. Sarah made a decision. She pulled out her sidearm, checked the magazine, took a breath, and then she did something nobody expected. She went on the offensive. Sarah didn't wait for them to come to her. She moved to the edge of the roof and looked down. 2 guards were entering the building below. 3 more were in the courtyard looking up, trying to figure out where she was. She had trained for this. Hundreds of hours on the range, thousands of rounds fired, scenarios that seemed impossible. But this wasn't a scenario. This was real. Sarah aimed at the courtyard. The angle was steep. The distance was 40 yards. The wind was gusting from the east. She exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger. The first guard dropped. The second guard turned, confused. Reaching for his weapon, Sarah fired again. He fell. The third guard started shouting, raising his rifle toward the roof. Sarah's third shot hit him center mass before he could fire. 3 targets, 3 seconds, 3 shots, contact, contact. Reeves's voice exploded in her earpiece. Mitchell, what's your status? Engaged, Sarah said calmly. I need extraction now. She moved across the roof. The 2 guards had entered the building. They would be on the stairs. She had maybe 20 seconds. Sarah positioned herself by the roof access door. She waited. The door burst open. The first guard came through fast, his rifle up. But he was looking across the roof, expecting her to be hiding. He wasn't expecting her to be right next to the door. Sarah struck like a viper. She grabbed his rifle with her left hand, pushing it away, and drove her right elbow into his throat. He staggered backward into the second guard. Sarah didn't hesitate. She disarmed the first guard and used his own rifle against him. 2 controlled bursts, both guards down. But the noise had attracted more attention. She could hear shouting from below. More guards were coming. Maybe all of them. And that meant Nazir was unprotected. Sarah made another decision. She ran to the edge of the roof and looked at the sisters' house. There was a gap of about 8 feet between the buildings. The sisters' house was 1 story shorter. A 10-foot drop. Mitchell, fall back, Reeves ordered. We're coming to you. Negative, Sarah said. I have an opportunity. I'm taking it. Mitchell, that's an order. Sarah took off her earpiece. She needed to focus. She backed up, got a running start, and jumped. For a moment, she was in the air, weightless, flying. Then she hit the roof of the sisters' house hard. She rolled to absorb the impact, felt her injured shoulder scream in protest, but kept moving. There was a skylight. She could see into the room below. Nazir was there. He was shouting at his remaining guards, pointing toward the building Sarah had just left. He was confused, angry, scared. Sarah smashed the skylight with the rifle butt. Glass rained down. She dropped through. Nazir turned, his eyes wide with shock. A woman, an American woman. In his sister's house, he reached for a pistol on the table. Sarah was faster. Don't, she said in perfect Arabic. Put your hands up. Nazir hesitated. He was calculating. Looking for options? Your guards are dead or dying, Sarah continued. You're alone. It's over. Nazir's face twisted with rage. You're a devil. A woman pretending to be a soldier. You have no honor. Sarah stepped closer, her rifle never wavering. My brother was 19 years old, she said quietly. His name was Danny Mitchell. He died because of a bomb. One of your bombs. He never got to graduate college. Never got married. Never had children. You took all of that from him. From my family. Nazir's eyes narrowed. 1 soldier among thousands. You think I remember them all? You think their deaths mean anything? Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The same feeling she had when she buried Danny. When she promised him she would make it mean something. No, she said. But you'll remember me. Nazir lunged for the pistol. Sarah fired once. Nazir al-Hamid, the man responsible for dozens of bombings and hundreds of deaths, fell to the floor and didn't move. Sarah stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Her shoulder throbbed. Her hands were shaking. She had just killed a man. Not in the chaos of battle. Not from a distance. Face to face. She waited to feel something. Regret. Horror. Guilt. But all she felt was tired. The door burst open. Commander Reeves came through with 2 other operators, weapons raised. They stopped when they saw Sarah standing over Nazir's body. Reeves lowered his weapon slowly. He looked at Sarah, at Nazir, at the broken skylight. "Mitchell," he said carefully. "What did you do?" Sarah put the rifle down. "I completed the mission, sir." Reeves stared at her for a long moment. Then incredibly he smiled. "Yes," he said. "Yes, you did. The extraction was messy. They had to fight their way out of the city." Sarah took fire twice. She returned fire both times. By the time they reached the extraction point, she had been in continuous combat for 40 minutes. She never stopped, never hesitated, never quit. When they finally made it back to base, Sarah collapsed. She slept for 16 hours straight. When she woke up, Commander Reeves was sitting next to her bed. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I got hit by a truck," Sarah said honestly. Reeves nodded. "The doctors say you have a torn rotator cuff. You've probably been operating with it for months. You need surgery." Sarah's heart sank. Surgery meant medical leave. Medical leave meant going home. Going home meant leaving the team. "Sir, I can—" Reeves held up his hand. "You're getting the surgery. That's not negotiable. But when you're cleared, you're coming back." "If you want to." "I want to, sir." Reeves stood up. "Good. Because you're valuable, Mitchell. What you did in Tal Rifat? I've seen operators with 15 years of experience who couldn't have pulled that off. You went into a hostile situation, alone, and eliminated a high-value target. You saved lives. American lives. Lives of people you'll never meet." He paused. "Your brother would be proud." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away. "Thank you, sir." Over the next 3 years, Sarah Mitchell became a legend. She completed 17 classified missions in 6 countries. She earned commendations that would never be made public. She saved lives that would never be counted. Other female candidates started making it through, but when they asked for advice, they were told the same thing. Be like Mitchell. Garrett, the man who once mocked her, ended up serving on her team. He trusted her with his life. She saved it twice. Chief Dawson, the instructor who told her she didn't belong, personally recommended her for promotion. "I was wrong about Mitchell," he wrote in his evaluation. "She's not just as good as the men. In some ways, she's better." But Sarah never forgot where she came from. She never forgot Danny. She wore his dog tags under her uniform on every mission. And 5 years after that conversation on the beach with Commander Reeves, Sarah stood in a cemetery in Montana. It was Danny's birthday. He would have been 29. Sarah placed flowers on his grave and knelt down. "Hey, little brother," she said quietly. "I know I haven't visited in a while, been busy, doing the work you started." The wind rustled through the trees, the same trees their father used to cut down. "They told me to quit," Sarah continued. "Everyone did. They said I didn't belong, that I was too small, too weak, that I'd never make it." She smiled. "But I did. I made it, and I'm still here. Still fighting. Still making a difference." She touched his headstone gently. "You asked me once what I wanted to be when I grew up. Remember? I said I didn't know. I was just trying to get through the day." Sarah stood up. The sun was setting over the Montana mountains. Orange and purple. Beautiful. "Well, now I know. I'm exactly what I was meant to be. I'm a soldier. A warrior. The person who stands between the innocent and the monsters. The person who doesn't quit. Who doesn't break. Who gets the job done." She saluted her brother's grave. "I'm the Navy's deadliest operative, Danny. And I became that because you believed in me, even when nobody else did, even when I didn't believe in myself." Sarah turned and walked back to her car. She had a flight to catch. Another mission. Another chance to save lives. Behind her, the wind whispered through the grass on Danny's grave, and somewhere, somehow, Sarah knew he was smiling. They told her to quit. They mocked her. Doubted her. Sabotaged her. They said she didn't belong. But Sarah Mitchell proved them all wrong, not with words. Not with complaints. Not with anger, with action. With sacrifice. With an unbreakable will, she became the person they said was impossible, and in doing so she honored her brother. She honored every person who was ever told they weren't enough. She showed the world that strength isn't about size, it's about heart, and Sarah Mitchell's heart was the strongest weapon the Navy ever had.